All right, team, we are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I have a classmate of mine from grad school, Amanda Krantz, in the episode today. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be here.
Where are you calling from, and just tell us a little bit about yourself for the audience so that they can get to know you, and we'll dive deep into BizDev. That I know that'll be a topic that we'll unpack a little bit, but give us a little bit of your background.
Sounds good. So I'm calling from Bend, Oregon. It's up in Central Oregon, so more mountainy, kind of like Colorado versus the rainy Portland that people often think of. Moved here 10 years ago, so way pre-pandemic, and been able to work remotely from here, which has been awesome. My background was started out electrical engineering at the Air Force Academy, and was in the Air Force for 6 years and had a pretty awesome career. I got to go to grad school in DC, and then I worked out in Silicon Valley at Lockheed Martin Missiles and Space during the dot-com boom, but as a in-plant acquisition person at Lockheed Martin, and then went back and coached Division I college tennis at the Air Force Academy before going to business school. And then when I got out of business school, I wanted to combine technology with business and music, which was my passion, and interviewed at iTunes to be the first product manager there, but didn't get the job and ended up at Launch, which got acquired by Yahoo. So I got to kind of see music down in Santa Monica and a little bit of what a big company was like. And then from there, worked at AT&T and was a business development product manager. So that was kind of began my kind of combo type role where you're doing innovation, where you're doing deals and product management kind of combined. And we did prepaid music content cards. So it was the era of ringtones, and they knew that there was something with digital music, and Napster and all that stuff was starting, and big companies are trying to figure out how to be relevant. And so that was a super interesting gig. And then AT&T got acquired. So out of all my startups I've worked at, you never think of the big company as the one that gets acquired. So that group got dissolved. And so I went on tour with my band at that time. So I was a drummer, and got endorsement deals and booked the tour and learned a lot about sales, which was what opened the door to Silicon Valley startups. And so then I was a BD hire at an early stage company, and then was a product manager for AOL Mail. So went back to a giant company, left there to start my own company, which was a gratitude software tool for healthcare. And then after that, went into drones. So I was business development, partnering with product management at a drone startup that started in Silicon Valley and moved to Bend. So they had a manufacturing facility here in Bend, Oregon. And it was an Air Force Academy classmate that was coming up here to open the facility, and just kind of stumbled across it as I was shutting down my startup. He was trying to build that out. And so ended up working with him to grow that, which was a fascinating ride. And then when that ended, I got hired to be a product manager for Amazon, working on their drone, like Amazon Prime Air. But that was in the era where, so I'd mentioned right before we started. So I interviewed for a role at Google, and I applied to work for you. But then I ended up getting a friend who was at Amazon, told me about an internal job for their drone role that they were looking for. Got hired for that. And then that's when all the layoffs started happening about 3 years ago. And so after a couple months where they asked to extend my offer, where my start date was going to be, they rescinded the offer. And so that opened up the opportunity to where I am now, which is heading up business development, also having our product management group report to me, and running finance at a startup that's based in Florida that makes cushions for people that use wheelchairs to avoid pressure injuries, and then applying that technology to Air Force pilots. So our first SBIR contract was for the B-52, because when they fly long missions, they're super uncomfortable, causes all kinds of musculoskeletal problems. And that company is called Caligon. And so all my worlds kind of combined. So the Air Force stuff came back, figuring out how to work with the Air Force and a startup on technology. We do in-house manufacturing, which I learned from the drone company. So the hilarious thing is my career is all over the place. And then I just got picked to speak on a panel at South by Southwest, and the panel topic is zigzag having a weird career. So it's all kind of come full circle.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's my background.
I thought I had a zigzaggy career, but you definitely do. Wow, that's so amazing. I kind of feel like each of those pursuits could be like an amazing Substack post, by the way. Like
Thanks.
you, yeah, it's you're living kind of like the liberal arts life, like
Yeah.
really exploring every angle. I
Yep.
love it. And doing it at a really high level. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
Coincidentally, I actually took, in the spirit of like lifelong learning, I took
Yeah.
an intro to drumming class a few weeks
Oh,
ago.
no way.
Oh my God, my brain was like fried after
What
coming out
kind
of
of drumming? Like drum set or like hand drums or what kind of drumming?
the drum set.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And because it looks so fun and I love listening to music, but my
It's fun.
God, trying to kind of have, different parts of your body go at different rhythms and stuff was just um, something that my brain, I don't think, had been trained to do in the past. But
So
yeah,
I taught after the tour ended, I taught kids drumming for a little while, and I would say I don't know how they were teaching it, but if you're trying to go too complex too quickly, it's not fun. What I learned from my drum teacher early on that I think is the best way to learn is put music on that you like and just start with like the bass drum and feel where
uh,
like the one is. Like start
yeah,
as simple as feel the beat and then
yeah.
add there and don't try to do all the coordination at once. Just enjoy whatever it is that you can feel with the music, and then it just grows much more organically from there.
You know, I think that approach would have worked better for me.
Do they try to
Uh,
teach all kinds of complex patterns to start?
we
Yeah,
not right in the first few minutes, but
yeah.
by the end of the lesson, we were doing like multiple, the
Keep your
bass is going to
hi-hat
be,
going and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
no.
And I just felt I actually didn't take another lesson after that because I
Yeah,
was just like, well, clearly, like some people, it just comes naturally to them in the first lesson. Um,
no.
but there were moments. There were moments where I was like not thinking about it anymore, and that was kind of magical.
Yeah, that's
I
really
guess
fun.
you could argue the same for onboarding new people to a team.
How so?
Like if you ask them to hit the ground running
Mm,
versus like, okay, let's kind of get them into the groove and like get them something very doable,
yeah,
and then layer up on top.
yeah, that's true.
You could argue as a manager, like maybe you'll have more successful onboarding of teammates that way. I don't know.
That's a good one. I hadn't thought about that. Out of all
Yeah.
my parallels that I put together, I didn't really think about that.
There we go. We got another post
There you
ready
go.
to go.
And
And
actually
by the way,
fits the drum shake theory. So originally my title, so I just started the Substack and I
mhm,
was going to call it Touring to Term Sheets with the parallels of bands to
yeah,
startups. And it was my 17-year-old son who was just like, that's stupid. You can't,
yeah,
he's
I
like,
think
that's
drum
super
kit theory
cheesy. Yeah.
is way more memorable. You could go in a lot of different directions with that
Yeah.
one. So that's awesome. So, uh, by the way, did you say you were a full-time coach, tennis coach as well?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Wow. What haven't you done? Unbelievable. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about the transition to BizDev because I think there are PMs who work with BizDev folks and we kind of think like, oh, those are the deal people.
Mhm.
But they may not really understand like the perspective of the BizDev professional.
Mhm.
What was your kind of first foray into BizDev like, and what do you think people should know about that function?
Yeah, I think so. There are just like product management, there's a spectrum, right? There's the very technical PMs and then the more business PMs, and then there's a range in between. I feel like business development is similar, where you have just your deal makers and their job is just sign the deals and don't think more strategically. Um, I don't think that ever works well at a smaller company for sure because it has to be so much more of a collaborative process because what deals you do really determine where you focus because you can only do so many things, right? And so in my first business development job out of business school, I worked at AT&T where that was a little bit more clear in one way in that they had these prepaid phone cards and it was open ended in that they said we want to do something with this, but they already had relationships with all the retailers, so Best Buy, Target, and Walmart. They weren't really working with the music labels yet, but there was an opportunity to do deals with, Sony Music, Warner Music. I was living in LA at the time, and AT&T was in New York. And so I would split my time between the two. But what we were going to do, what kind of deal, really was dependent on what product we wanted to build. And so what that could be is where it overlaps with product management, right? So, and when you have customers and you're listening to what your customers want, there's that intuition around, you want to meet your customers' needs, but know when to push back when they don't know what they need isn't necessarily the product you should sign. So if you're just a deal person, you want to sign the deal, it could be easy to just sign the deal that you think that they want. And so that's where business development is also different than sales, right? Sometimes people will combine those. Sales is about how much you can sign. Can you grow it fast? BD, I think, is so much more important to be slow and thoughtful, and it's the deals you don't sign. So the one example from AT&T that I always come back to when people ask about it is, I got to go to Bentonville, Arkansas to meet with the music buyer at Walmart. And I'll never forget, I was pretty young at this point, relatively, I guess. It was like early 30s, and you got this old school Walmart music buyer. And he said, I want a country ringtone card. Because they wanted these prepaid ringtone cards, and country music is what sells at Walmart. And so if I were going to just wear a sales hat, I would try to sell them that, because that's what he wanted to buy. But understanding the end user and the product we were going to build, I don't know if you remember at the time, early ringtones were just a beat. There was no music, and some people don't even remember ringtones. But so for the people who've never seen a ringtone, you could like customize your little flip phone and make it ring a certain way. But almost every country song has very similar beats. And so hip hop at the time was what was selling the most ringtones, because it was all around the beats, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a BD role, but it was very similar to product management, because you could argue about it or you could run an experiment. So the way I got the deal done was, I tried to tell them, you don't want a country ringtone card, you want a hip hop card. And he's like, well, hip hop doesn't sell at Walmart. And I'm like, but hip hop is the product you want. So what's cool about doing BD or being an entrepreneur at a big company is you've got the resources. So I was able to say, why don't we just do both? Let's run an experiment, because you could debate until you're blue in the face, but you don't have the data. So we actually ran an experiment with 3 different types of ringtone cards. We did a country music card, a hip hop card. And then my theory was, people don't buy music based on the genre. They buy it based on a band that they like. And so that's when I did a deal with Warner Music. They had there was a band called Simple Plan. They were like a pop punk band at the time. I don't know, did you ever hear of Simple Plan?
What song were they known for, a particular?
They're a one-hit wonder. I'm trying to think of the song right now, but they were kind of popular at the time, and they were in the studio. So the deal I came up with there was, get them to just record like, hey, this is so-and-so from Simple Plan, pick up your damn phone, like just super silly stuff at the time, but people liked it. And their album was coming out, and it was going to be on the end cap at Target. So then we also went to Target and said, can you put this ringtone card that's a Simple Plan card, it's got their music, their voice, with their album coming out, and sell that on the end cap? So that also is similar to what I've experienced in any different role I've had in my career, which is, someone says, you can't put that on an end cap. And the question that I always say is, why? Like, why not? Well, then you just keep going deeper. And that also, I think, is the similarity in my mind for BD to product, is that curiosity of what's driving it. Sometimes you really can't. Sometimes there's not a good reason. And once you get to the bottom of it, you can run an experiment there for a period of time. So we had that card on the end cap. And guess which one do you think, what was the order for those 1, 2, and 3? What do you think was the order in success?
I'm thinking the Simple Plan end cap combo.
Yeah, kind of teed it up. And then what was second?
Second, I don't know, maybe the hip hop.
Yeah.
And the third was country.
And had I just done BD from like a sales perspective, I would have just sold the customer what they wanted, which was a country ringtone card, and it would have bombed. And then people would have said, well, this isn't really a successful product, but you didn't sell the right product. And so that's where I've done it in a bunch of different ways, but that's one example where I feel like BD and product, when you're looking at something new, is very similar.
Yeah, that's right. Like I think some folks think of BD as very transactional, like, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, we're going to do a partnership with this company and that's done, and they'll negotiate something and come up with a term sheet.
yeah,
But what you're describing is a much more creative, exploratory,
yeah,
kind of organic process where
yeah,
it is like building a new product, frankly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's where I am like now. So I'm working at Caligon. Started with Air Force, but then when we were I was blown away. We went to CES, which is huge. Have you been to CES recently?
I've not, no. Is it still like ginormous?
It was kind of crazy. So I last went there like 20 years ago when I was at like Radar was the first mobile photo sharing app. So that's where so I did the AT&T thing. I went on tour and then I was BD hire at a Silicon Valley startup. So it was big company BD and then really similar at a 12-person startup. So that we went to CES, and then when I went back 20 years later, they had this big sign. It was the 100-year anniversary, and they showed what were the technologies. They had this huge wall showing the
Mhm.
technologies that were like the big thing of that year. And so way back, even before our time, there was like the beta VHS like thing that came, and then there was cell phones, and then there was
Mhm.
this 20-year gap where I'm like, what's been going on in technology? Since I haven't been here. And so it went all the way like through that era. And then when I was there um, last year, it was crazy. They had like John Deere tractors, and so they had huge areas, and cars were really big. So when we had a little booth in the startup area, and it blew me away that major companies are coming through there looking for startups to find new technology to work with.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Hyundai found us like 2 years prior, and we did a deal with them where we put our tech, and I'm allowed to talk about this one. We put our tech into a Hyundai Palisade, and then went to Korea and demoed it for their executives. And this is another example where BD and product, especially at an early stage company, are so tied. They were
Mm.
excited. They wanted to do a deal, but we could not do that deal as exciting as it was. But it's because it's so different. Right now, we make custom wheelchair cushions where it's manufactured where we can turn it around, in 7 to 14 days. Each order is really specific. That's so different than doing mass
Yeah.
market, low margin. We're high margin, low volume. That's high
Mhm.
volume, low margin. And if I was going to just try to do a deal with Hyundai, that sounds great, but that could have crushed our company because it's a totally different business than what we're
Mhm.
in right now. And so we went back then another year, and there's a major motorcycle company that found us, and that's interesting, right? It's still automotive, but it's much smaller volumes, and so trying to figure out where you can take your technology next. So that one is like a maybe, right? And then the third one that found us there was actually, no, they didn't find us there. I'm sorry. This is one where I reached out. So um, we do very little outbound BD. So that's another difference with business development is how much outbound do you do
Mhm.
versus see what comes to you. So that's another whole conversation. But on this one, we realized those weren't good things to do. So now you put your product hat back on and what makes sense to us as a company. And we were getting certified with the Air Force for aviation for the B-52 cushion. So now what's closer to that? What kind of deal do we want to do versus waiting to see what comes to us? Collins Aerospace is a tier one supplier for seats for commercial aviation. So now we've been working with them on figuring out how to put our tech into commercial aviation, which is much closer to the work we're doing with the Air Force. And
Mm.
so now it's a slow process because commercial aviation moves really slowly. We've been working with them for a couple of years. So the startup pace versus commercial aviation is really, really different. But it's still trying to figure out what's the right deal at the right time with the product roadmap that you have internally, the things that you're already building is a really tricky dance, I guess. And then with investors, it always looks flashy, right? For a business
Mhm.
development deal, which logo do you have? And not being sucked in to take that if it isn't necessarily the right place to focus your limited engineering resources.
Yeah, that requires a lot of judgment and confidence to actually say no to a logo opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Especially like early career people, they want to be the one that landed that
Look at the
Hyundai.
deal.
Sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is you're kind of looking through like, okay, well, but what happens after that deal gets signed? Like, how's that going to set us up for success?
Hmm.
And I guess at the time it probably feels a little riskier. Like, well, I'm going to turn down this bird that's kind of in hand,
Right.
and wait for something that's a better fit. But you risk like not having any deal this year, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a similar thing on the PM side that I've noticed is the features that you don't build.
Mm.
And everybody wants to ship a lot of things, and now it's so easy to ship features that you end up with these like Christmas tree products where it's just like a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff there.
Yeah.
And it is hard. It is hard to not launch something because the counter argument is like, well, let's just see how it goes.
Right.
But to your point, there's an opportunity cost, and then there's
Mhm.
the ongoing maintenance, and then eventual deprecation costs.
And user
So
experience. And user
yeah,
experience. Like, do you use Ramp at all for expenses? Have you ever seen Ramp?
I've seen it. Yes, I have used it in one previous job. Yeah.
So we switched to it from Bill.com, and so now I'm also running finance, which is another story. But um, it was great when we started, but they raised a ton of money. I'm sure they dumped a bunch of resources on it, and they
Yeah.
just keep changing features and moving things around. And the user experience is jumbled. It still works pretty well mostly, but when you think about what's the primary use of this, there was a there at one point there was at the end of the month we tried to transfer money from like the investment account
Mhm.
to the business account where you're going to pay the bills, and it like
Mhm.
every day it kept saying it was going to move later, and I realized, oh, they're playing with your money. Like they don't actually have it to transfer, like, and
Mm.
now we need it to pay bills, and before that it was moving quickly, and I'm like, that to me is another example of, it doesn't matter all these little features you can push out if you can't do the primary function, which is allow me to access my money when I needed to pay my bills. Like that's when you start to lose your users, right? Like it made us start to think about, is
Yeah.
this a place we want to still keep our money?
Wow. Yeah, I think you are pointing out like they raised a bunch of money,
Uh-huh.
and then they hired a bunch of people, and
Right.
those people, like, their natural muscle memory is to ship stuff.
Shift stuff, right? But are you shipping the
Yeah.
right things? Are you focusing on
Yeah.
the right
And
feature?
it's sort of like the new cook, who gets all this like new kitchen appliances, and then they put just
Just
all
throw
the
them in.
stuff, and you're like, wow, like a simpler dish probably would have performed better.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I do wonder, like, the economics of software seems to be evolving such that before it did cost so much to build new things that you were forced to be more judicious.
Mm.
But now, as the cost to produce things goes down, are we going to end up with every product being like 100 features that are okay?
Yeah, seriously. So, like, how do you decide? And especially, like, you've worked much more at big companies with lots of product managers, lots
Mhm.
of engineers, and they are supposed to be showing what did they achieve. How do you think you actually get them to recognize the value of what not to build when, I don't know, they never get rewarded for what they didn't build in that situation, do they?
No,
Yeah.
no. Uh, you don't. You get rewarded for shipping things that had like made the chart go up and to the right.
Yeah.
Your natural incentive is to ship as much as you can
Right.
and put as many bets out there as possible. But the customer is kind of like the victim of all these experiments,
Yeah.
right? Of course, when it works, the customer will be very happy. But yeah, it is. I think it's like so many things in life. Like it's explained by the incentives. And to your point, the incentives are to ship things that get you promoted. And the best way to do that for each individual is to try as many things as possible. Of course, they should apply judgment.
Yeah.
But there is a point where I remember one of my first projects at Google, my manager said, "Hey, this product's done really well.
Mhm.
You don't have to have a roadmap that goes out 5 years for this thing. Like maybe this product is doing exactly what it's doing and it's reached its point of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And you
Okay.
should work on another product, you know?
Okay.
But I remember him saying that and I was like, oh man, like I finally found something that's working really well. Like, of course I want to lean into it.
Right.
But yeah, that I don't know if organizations have figured out. I guess the way you would do it is we don't want to penalize failed experiments because then people
Right.
don't try anymore either,
Yeah.
right? So there's like a balancing act there.
Yeah, but I think it's running more controlled experiments, right? Versus just throwing a bunch of stuff out there. So like AOL Mail was one of the few companies that I had access to like tremendous amounts of data, because when I was there were still, millions and millions of users. And I joined right after they had done a redesign of AOL Mail. So it was in the era of Gmail had gotten really big, but they were starting to throw a bunch of features out there, and it was getting kind of like, it started to feel like this is just engineers tinkering in the user experience. Like, it was fine, but there was an opportunity. Apple had become retro cool again. It had come back around. And so they had hired Tim Armstrong from Google, and they had hired all these ex-startup people in Palo Alto to like make AOL Mail cool again. And so we had this amazing team of really talented people and all these really great designers. And when I joined, they had just rolled out this new redesign. And so I'm like, well, let me see the data. How's it going? And so we had like thousands and thousands of customers saying, I can't figure out how to compose an email. And I was like, okay, this seems like the major function of email, right? Like, I don't care how pretty it is. They don't know how to compose an email. So the answer I got was, well, and I asked, like, well, are we doing anything about it? No, we don't have the most technically savvy users, so it'll just take them a while to use it. And I was like, I don't know. This goes back to like the judgment thing that you've talked about before. It's like, I don't need to see a certain number of, like, there's not a percentage of feedback that needs to go over a certain amount to be able to say that seems wrong, right? This is email. They don't know how to do it. Let me look at why. So I'm guessing you didn't use AOL Mail back in like 2012 era.
2012, no, but I mean, a fun fact: in 2005, I worked on Hotmail.
Oh, no way! I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I did have a Hotmail account back in the day, but yeah, they're at the top of it. What they had was, it's a new in one box and then text and IM, because the big feature idea was from their mail they can send a text or an instant message. But I was like, well, why does it say new? Because it looks like it could be a new text or a new IM. They're like, well, with the boxes we designed, email was too big, it didn't fit. Or no, compose didn't fit. That's what it was. They couldn't do compose because that's how they used to do compose a message. I was like, well, what if you, and they're like, and we can't change the box size because this is already designed. Like, well, what if you just run an experiment or just change, like, if you can make an experiment simple enough where you don't have to debate it. We went from new to just email. So then it was email, text, and IM. And then all of a sudden the confusion about how do you send an email went away. But they were, if you didn't ask why or just be annoyed that users can't do the core function, the thinking was, let's just wait and see and they'll eventually figure it out. So I don't know, that to me is just another example of, you have a bunch of smart people that have a bunch of good reasons, but you can end up shipping a product to millions of users where they can't do the core function. And that's when, it's not going to work. And that experiment was a lot easier. It didn't confuse people. You didn't move a bunch of stuff around. You just took out one word and put a different word. So not every problem is that easy to solve, but I think experimenting, I'm definitely a fan of experimenting, but not if it's going to, I guess, confuse people so much to where they can't do the core functionality, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the judgment, the system does eventually reward PMs, because what I think long term, the PMs that move up further and faster have a higher hit rate. So they'll launch something that goes up and to the right, and they'll do another thing that goes up and to the right.
Yeah.
And immediately they distinguish themselves. So it's like,
Okay.
oh, okay, well that Bob wasn't just lucky with product one, like he did product
Yeah.
one, successful in product two. So eventually, like the system does kind of sort itself out. But you do, I would say, at the IC level,
Yeah.
you do have a lot of people like gambling, like placing a lot of bets, kind of thing. I don't
Yeah.
know if maybe that might be working as intended too. Like, but the other thing that you raised was you're working with this kind of really dream team of very capable people on that AOL redesign,
Yeah.
and it took a lot of courage for you to challenge that
Yeah.
design, because I'm
Yeah.
guessing they had designed other products
Oh,
before, and they
yeah.
were pretty successful and they're really
Yeah.
smart, whatever. And for you to say like, well, I don't know, like, are they really going to figure that out? And they had an answer, which is like, well, society, we did this, blah blah blah. So the easy thing for you would have been to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But good on you to kind of be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations and have that intellectual honesty.
Yeah, I definitely do that sometimes to the detriment of my ability to play. I definitely am not a corporate politics kind of person, so I'm very polarizing. After that incident, I also realized we had some vulnerabilities on the security side, so I started digging in a bit into account management. And because there was so much technical debt, AOL Mail had been around for so long, they
Mm,
had just had Colin Powell's email. So a bunch of these old school bigwig people used AOL Mail still. So Colin Powell, who was the chief of staff, like his
yeah.
email got hacked. So the CEO got called. And so I started digging into why. And there were some feathers that got ruffled when I realized what was going on and what we would need to fix. And so the people on the identity team had been trying to make these changes for a long time, but they had been there a long time too, so they'd only pushed so hard. But
Mhm.
I ended up coming up with a way that we could try to fix things that would make people on the subscription side. There was still subscription, AOL subscription, where it was $1 billion business. And there was that old school debate over if you make it easy to do certain things, then they might cancel their subscription. But it
Mhm.
wasn't okay to leave it how it was. And so I was the person willing to fight that battle a bit. So I had this army of identity people that were mostly engineers and didn't want to fight, like behind me going, go, go, go. And I had to fly out to Dulles, like, which was very much like old school kind of government working, kind of like people had their cubicles decked out. Like they'd get really upset if they were going to have to move cubicles. Like it was very entrenched and people
Mm,
didn't want to change. And so
interesting.
being willing to fight for what's right is an interesting place to be at a large company. But it is really so David Temkin, did you know David Temkin? He was at Google for a while. He was
No.
boss's boss at AOL. And
Mhm.
so I mentioned to you earlier, so I applied to work for you at Google when you were in healthcare, and it didn't make it through the massive Google machine. But then David Temkin, who was my boss's boss at AOL, saw me doing all of these things, saw what I was able to do when I left
Mhm.
my startup, and then he was trying to get me in at Google to work on his identity side because
Mhm.
there are people that I think in any big company will appreciate somebody that will fight for what they feel is right, but it's certainly not everybody. Like you have to be okay, I think, making some people uncomfortable when you do want to like take
Yeah,
back
that
things, I guess.
you have challenged my assumptions about military academies, because
Also,
I would have thought that there's a chain of command,
uh,
and you respect the orders that come down and you
yeah,
execute. That's not the pattern of behavior that you're discussing with,
interesting.
like where you're kind of pushing back and saying like,
Yeah,
well, why should we do that? Um, is there, how do I
um,
reconcile
that's a
that?
good question. So I do have to clarify that I am also a fan of like the Amazon disagree and commit. I think that is very
Mhm.
much
Yeah.
a military view. It is your job and the expectation that and they teach a lot of integrity. So what is consistent with the academy, I would say everyone who's gone through any military academy and a military officer is integrity, ethics, fight for what's right. But then eventually, once you've passionately like fought for what you think is the right thing to do, if the decision is to do something different, you do get in line and you support it and you execute it to the best of your ability. So I have always done that as well. Like I never ever would fight and undermine a decision once it's made. And I think that's the one part of me. I'm not very military in that I don't like guns, and I don't like, I'm not a stereotypical, I think, uh, I didn't grow up like there's a certain kind of persona people have of people that were in the
Yeah.
military that I think is true in a lot of ways, that I'm not like that. So I wouldn't say I'm in general your stereotypical ex-military person,
Mhm.
but I am in that I think fighting for what you believe in. People talk about service, like
Mhm.
for me, service is also serving whoever you're working for. And if that's the customer, I fight passionately in getting them what I think is right for them. And I think that is, I don't know, does that make more sense that like, that when you think
Yeah.
about it in terms of disagree and commit, that your job is to truly
Yeah.
be passionately trying to do the best you can for the people you're serving.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very first principles, like mission driven way to look at it. And it makes a ton of sense. And I think that's super healthy. I hope that that's common for everybody. Let's talk about the hiring thing,
Okay.
because rarely do two people meet
Yeah.
where they were on the other side of the thing where it didn't happen and like,
Yeah.
oh, well, what happened?
Yeah.
So you reminded me before we started recording that, oh, hey, did you know I applied for a job? Like, I was like, what? Like walk us through
Yeah.
your perspective, and then I'll share the backstory, and
Okay.
then it'll be kind of fun to trade notes.
Awesome. Um, So I had been working at my startup for 6 years. It was called, and you pronounced it better than me. So I said Doje. It's a phonetic spelling for thank you in Cantonese. So how
Mhm.
did you earlier you said, how would you say it?
Oh, I said Dodge, which is
Yeah.
like the Cantonese pronunciation, but I understand
Which,
why that's hard for people to say.
yeah, but thank you for saying it the right way. So it was a gratitude tool where I had been in the hospital twice and I had a nurse who I wanted to thank. And I didn't thank them when I
Mhm.
was there until after I got home. And I have a really good friend who's a PICU nurse, the kids ICU nurse. So I asked her, what do people do to thank you after they leave the hospital? And she had said
Mhm.
they can bring cookies or, leave them at the floor. And I'm like, well, do they know that you got them? Does their manager know what an amazing job? Because these two times I had someone go so far above and beyond for me that I wanted to make sure they knew how much I appreciated them, that their managers knew how amazing they were. And I was like, cookies just isn't going to do it. And so an amazing full stack developer I worked with years ago, his parents had been sick. And so I reached out to him and said, I don't think this is a business, but it needs to be built. And so we started out just creating a tool for patients to thank healthcare workers. And we got UCSF, Benioff Children's Hospital, to be our first kind of pilot customer. And so then they had been working with a company called the Studer Group about peer-to-peer gratitude, and they were writing handwritten peer-to-peer notes. So they asked us if we could incorporate that. So we ended up building this whole gratitude platform where people can thank each other. It was all about authentic gratitude, and then managers could see it and recognize them. And it worked really well. We ended up got a deal with Kaiser, and did another pilot with them, worked with University of Michigan. We were talking with Stanford. And so over this time, I learned a lot about healthcare, but it wasn't traditional healthcare. And when I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, someone sent me a link that said, hey, one of your classmates is the director of product management for Google Healthcare. They're
Mhm.
hiring a PM. You should reach out to him. And so I was like, well, I don't fit exactly, but I have some experience more recently in healthcare, kind of understanding what's going on. It would be at least worth a conversation. So I think I may have pinged you on LinkedIn, and then I
Maybe.
also directly applied, and the recruiter got back to me. We had a conversation, and she said, man, your background's super interesting. Like, we had a really great conversation. She's like, but we're at this stage now where we're hiring for very specific
Yeah.
skills, not looking for, like you had mentioned in an earlier conversation with someone about people used to hire athletes. You could be a
Mhm.
great PM if you have judgment, if you can jump in and work with all kinds of different people. but we're at a stage now where you want this deep expertise. And so normally with my BD and entrepreneurial hat, I'll keep pushing. But when she said that you didn't even want to have a first conversation with me, first you have the bruised ego, right? Of like, man, I've been pretty successful in my life, and this is a classmate, and he doesn't want to talk with me. So I had to think, like, do I push? Because I probably could have gotten directly to you or through friends. But in my mind, there's an opportunity cost of that as well. If what you're looking for at that time is that deep expertise, then I would rather go somewhere where who I am is what they're looking for. And so I actually didn't push to follow up with you. So then what's hilarious is when I put out my drumstick theory Substack post, being true to who I am and all of my crazy, weird, different background, that's when you reached out to me to talk. And it reinforces that if you do you to the best of your ability, that's when I think the world works out. So now I'm really curious on your, like, from your view, would you have ever even considered an unconventional PM hire in that role? Or was I right that it wasn't worth my time to keep pushing?
I think had you kept pushing, I definitely would have said, "Oh yeah, let's catch up." Like we were classmates. I actually remember. I think were in an EC class together. I remember you always having like a very clear point of view on stuff, which I appreciate. So I definitely would have talked and reconnected. I think the hiring decision wouldn't have been the same. Wouldn't have changed.
Right. Yeah.
So you would have paid some opportunity costs.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have resulted in a different outcome. And the reason was when I joined the health team, I was coming from YouTube. So I was like a cat video guy leading like clinical product development for Google Health. And so I was like, man, I need to get some people who know EHRs and health data and enterprise health like inside and out. And we ended up hiring a person who worked for like a decade in healthcare and had built electronic health record products from scratch. And that was like ticking the box that we needed. And so part of the other thing that comes to mind is, and actually someone said this to me a couple years ago when I was looking at a role and I didn't get it. And he said, "Tom, you and I are too similar." And I was like, well, isn't that a good thing? Like, we speak the same language. But now I'm like, he, sometimes a hiring manager needs to find a compliment.
Right.
And, I think in the old days, early Google, we would have been like, just hire the smartest people you can. And they always figure it out. And then you would have been in that category.
Yeah.
But I think now, a few years ago, I already started to see more specialization, especially at the more senior levels. Like I see, like, kind of right out of B school, like just go for athletes is fine.
Yeah.
And then now with AI,
I
think it's even more extreme where it's like, well, everybody with Claude can write a good PRD now. So, and they can learn about a new industry pretty quickly just using AI. So what you really value is the domain expertise where they've seen this movie many, many times and they have that extra 5% judgment. That's going to be the difference between first and second place. So that's kind of crazy how we reconnected after many years of this happening. And but know that I think the Taylor, the recruiter, steered you right, because I think she knew, I need someone who like bleeds EHR, and you had healthcare and you had innovation,
right?
And you just have like a great background all around, but it wasn't a like fit for purpose hire the way we were looking for.
And I think it's a reminder for anybody. It's such an emotional roller coaster when you're looking for a role at any level and with any expertise or background that, like, I've shared that story in other other ones with, like when I didn't get the iTunes job, like putting
Mhm.
yourself out there, nobody bats 1,000. Like I think it's similar to like a top hitter, right? If you're batting
Mhm.
300, you're doing pretty well. But unlike batting, where like it would be great if you got on base every time, I really do think the old parable of like it could be good, could be bad, who knows, is really true. And you can't you got to just have a thick skin and not take it personally. And it's also similar, I think, to college applications you and I had talked about sooner, which is working with any kid who's applying to school, or even at one point in my career, I also didn't mention I worked with there's a MBA admissions consulting, Stacy Blackman, where she has a brilliant model where she hires only people who graduated from top business schools to be her consultants. So she does all the BD funnel and gets people who apply, and then she doesn't have to manage them. You get a bunch of type A overachievers and you just give them candidates. And so I got to work with people applying to business school, and it is similar to working with a high school kid. When it's your own kid, it's really different, but there is a common theme, I think, across applying for a job or applying to business school or figuring out even where you want to go as a high school kid, which is the best thing you can do is just get really clear on who you are. And if that
Yes.
means that you don't get in somewhere, it probably isn't the right place. The worst thing you can do is try to just be all things to all people, because then it's fine. If a place can clearly in a second say you're not the right person here, that's a win. So I would say me not like Taylor being able to quickly say you're not the right person. At first it
Mhm.
hurts, but then you're like, oh, I clearly was who I am. And
Mhm.
then that led me to my role now, which is so much fun. And I'm not, I didn't optimize maybe for the most amount of money, but I don't think I would have done as well. I would have been miserable. Like, because when you're not in a place that pulls from your core strengths, I feel like even if you can figure out a way to get in, at some point it's going to eat away at you. And so I think, yeah, it's like for applying for colleges, it's the same thing. Like if you can get a clear view of yourself, you might not get accepted somewhere, but the place you do, much more likely is going to be a place that you're going to shine. And so it's
Yeah,
the same with jobs, I think.
I totally agree. And I mean, in hindsight, 2 or 3 years later, we restructured that whole group. So like,
Oh,
I'm not sure
really?
it exists anymore after
Yeah,
that
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Uh, so you might have dodged a bullet in some ways.
yeah.
Um, the thing that you're talking about that really strikes a chord with me is for high achieving folks growing up. Um, I was led to believe that, great winners just crush it on anything they do.
Hmm.
And I think what you're talking about is, well, that at some point in your career, and I would say even early, to your point, like even applying to college, like it doesn't make sense to bat 1,000. Like that's kind of a bug. Like something's not right.
Yeah,
Like if you see these headlines, like, "Oh, meet the kid that got admitted to every single Ivy League school,"
yeah,
and you're like, "Well, how does he want to go to like Brown and
yeah,
Stanford? Like
yeah.
that doesn't make
Not
any
the same.
sense, or whatever." Um, so I do think a lot of high achieving folks are not wired to accept failure.
Hmm.
And if failure happens, the first thing that we ask ourselves is, what could I have done differently to change the outcome?
Hmm.
And sometimes it's like, well, you weren't meant to go there or get that job or whatever. And it has nothing to do with your value or your
Right.
intelligence or work ethic. It's just like they needed someone with a different background. That's not
Yeah.
what you had. You can't have every background, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. But early on in your career, you do what you do kind of get everything. Like you are the
Yeah,
type of all these different things. And
yeah.
so it yeah, it's also like when the Lean In book came out, I was at
Mhm.
AOL and they handed those out to everybody. And
Mm,
so I ended up talking to some other women where it's a great concept, and I appreciate where she was coming from. There are
mhm,
women that I think need to learn to lean in, but
mhm,
in a similar vein to like you can't win everything, you also are going to destroy yourself if you never give yourself the chance to lean out, and
mm,
putting extra pressure on people who are already fighting their instincts to like try to like, have it all. Like people say like, balance, like you can't have, back in the 70s, it was like, you can be this career woman and have it all. But like now I think there's been this shift to, and it's the same for men. I'm talking about with women, but I feel like it's the same pressure, right? Like you can't do everything to the extreme all the time. Something is going to break. And so,
Yeah.
um, knowing when it's okay to lean out, knowing when you don't have to keep having grit and keep going at something if it's not working. Like we had talked also earlier about that. Like you don't hear enough of the stories of the decisions people have to make to know when it's okay to walk away or take an exit that's maybe not the huge exit, but it wraps it up nicely and it can carry on in some way, or it takes care of employees, but maybe you don't make money or your investors write it off. Like I don't feel like we see enough of those stories. Um, and so that's one of the things that I've been really kind of pushing on lately.
Yeah, I think the fact, like, so people should check out Drum Chick Theory,
Thank you.
because there's a post there about when things didn't work out in
Yeah.
different parts of your kind of career and life experiences, and knowing when to kind of say like, okay, I'm going to move on.
Mhm.
I think the one that's most memorable is like the band, like the
Yeah.
bassist and the singer, and then people paying for, trying to undermine your new singer. And I was like, oh my God, this sounds like a startup.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I think part of it is that, success is probabilistic.
Mm,
And you could be the best in the world at something. It doesn't mean you're going to bat 1,000, even when it is a perfect match.
right.
And I do you play poker at all or no?
A little bit. A little
Okay,
bit.
well, sometimes if you're in a poker tournament, you got to give up some hands that actually look pretty good early, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
they're not panning out.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good
So,
analogy.
and if you deploy all your chips against this hand that started out looking good, but now
Mhm.
clearly is not looking as good based on all this new information that comes in subsequent kind of parts of the game, that the smart move is to actually move on to the next hand.
Yeah.
But that's easier to do in poker than in life, because in life the cost of saying like, yeah, we're gonna kind of wrap up the band, or we're gonna wrap up this company, and I'm gonna do something, or I'm gonna go to a new company or a new job, or even I'm just gonna take a little break. Like that is, we're not wired for that. And we weren't. I think this is like, now we're getting into like parenting, but I do
Yeah.
have concerns around like achievement culture.
Mhm.
And I live in Palo Alto, and there's a lot of high achieving
Mhm.
families here. And it's just like, ooh, are we sure that we're setting up these kids for success to think that they have to be nationally ranked at everything? Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And what happens when they stumble? And you see this sometimes with new hires that are straight out of undergrad or grad school,
Mhm.
where all they've had is success.
Mhm.
And then they get on a team and they don't get along with someone, and people don't want to work with them. And now you're like, oh God, I got to have a coaching conversation with,
Mhm.
Jane, and kind of go over how like being right is necessary but not sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, so yeah, it's I can't wait to read more of your stuff, Amanda.
Oh,
Uh,
thanks.
you I hope you, because you're willing to kind of put it all out there, and that's like so refreshing in 2026, I guess, by the time this gets
Yeah.
published.
But I think
That
it's but
more of
but
that.
thank you, but I'm curious what you think though. Like, so in my last post, I don't want it to be just about me. I want to share other people's stories. And so I
Mhm.
know two founders
Yep.
who recently ended their startups. One is young and one is older, like our age.
Mhm.
Um, the younger one took my challenge and wrote his reflections and shared it publicly. And it was really great. I don't know if you saw
Mhm.
his, like when he shut down
Yes.
his company.
Yes.
But then when he posted on his LinkedIn, there was a guy who was awful, was like just bashed him about, you should have known that. And like, of course, like you should have had that awareness before. And I'm like, so there is a real, I guess I understand why people are afraid to share, because there are people out there that will then attack. And so you're protecting that vulnerability. And then the older person has not shared yet. And I think there's more risk potentially when you've had all this other success of like, what does it mean if you share this? Or I don't know all the reasons why yet. They're contemplating if they're going to share. But it also is really hard when you've raised money from friends or even just regular investors. And if it doesn't work out, facing that is challenging. And so I guess my question for you is, we're never going to change the people out there that will attack, like this person who put this kind of attacking post on the younger kid who shared his story. How do you think about people being willing to share? Because there is the value of people sharing these and not feeling it, like not allowing those things to get to you, or being a barrier to sharing when people do attack like that.
Oh, that's so hard. I think part of it is most people would be more willing to share successes and mixed things and failures if everyone else was sharing similar transparency. But if everybody else is just talking about like everything's amazing, I just got promoted, whatever, and then one or two are like, oh, my startup freaking was a disaster and it didn't work out, or like we're wrapping it up, then I think the concern is the sharer gets penalized. And they are like, well, I'm going to look like I'm kind of not as good as everybody else. Maybe in reality, you might be better. But everybody else is kind of choosing what they reveal.
Right.
So there is a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. I think really people who've been around and have great judgment about other people recognize that vulnerability and authenticity as a strength. But maybe people earlier in their career, they don't. And so you wonder like, okay, is this going to kind of come through? And so, yeah, I think that's a tough one. And I think that's why it's rare to see people put themselves out there, because they're like, well, look, what if the next hiring manager
sees it?
And they have another candidate that just looks like they win all the time. Nothing but winning.
Yeah.
Then maybe that hiring manager will pick that other candidate and think of me as some kind of damaged goods or whatever, when in reality, I'm just the one being honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I can see why your other guest may or may not want to share.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing will be, there's probably a way to be open and transparent without like completely falling on your sword, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's still good. Like, okay, here are some things that worked and here are some things that didn't work, and this is what I took away from it. Like, I think that type of positioning can be like kind of thread the needle. But it is kind of sad that the incentives are not there for people to be open. I mean, it's true about lots of things, right, in life. Yeah.
I also think even if it's not a hiring manager seeing it, it is still human nature to want the win too. Like, I'm not going to lie, at the startup I'm at now, people are like, why, with all the different things you've done, why are you still grinding at a startup for relatively less pay? One, it's fun, and like lifelong learner, like I love the opportunity to wear a bunch of different hats and constantly learn. Like, I'm learning a ton, but there is a little piece of me that's like for the startups, like I've had many little wins. I've had some good successes. I learned kind of a new phrase that I really like, which is looking at a startup as far as which ones. It was an investment thesis of one investor that I guess I didn't hear, because most companies don't make any money. But her thing is, if you have a Series A startup that they have more revenue than dollars they've raised, they're a good candidate for actually having a real business. And so we were like, I knew we were close, and I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, we have more revenue then money we raised. Like, this is a real business that's got a
Yeah,
real chance of like growing. It's not just
yeah,
get growth or get
yeah,
users. Like, it's we're selling stuff that people want and we're making money. And there is a little part of me that, while I think it's great to have honesty and share when things didn't work out, like, I really want this to be a big win. Like,
of course.
those
Yeah.
are still really fun too, right?
Yeah, you definitely like, I think we all want those things. The poker analogy is like if you play in a tournament and they pay out like the top like third of entrants, like you if you play perfect,
Mhm.
you might win 40% of the time. You might get a little edge because of your
Okay.
decision making, but there's so much variance
Yeah, yeah.
in the outcomes that even if you make the right decision,
Uh-huh.
there's a big kind of like luck element to it.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, most of us, even if we make all the right calls, we're not going to get the giant Andreessen mega round and then the big IPO on the NASDAQ and,
yeah.
ring the bell and all that kind of thing. So, um, this is just life. I mean, and the other thing is, I also think it's not healthy, and I think you and I are kind of like we're looking at things holistically. It's not healthy to judge your success by like, oh, am I going to be the one that's on the cover of Business Week or something like that? Like that, you could do all the right things,
And
and
that's,
there's only going to be a few of those.
well, and then that's where, like, it, could be good or could be bad. It's great you go to a top business school, but then our classmates are Sal Khan and, like, I guess we have a new like, people are like, oh, Charles Duhigg, like, I want to write a book, but like he wrote Power of Habit. Like, there is a level of comparison that you have to
Yeah,
get very comfortable with. Just enjoy the journey, like enjoy your journey, and you can't. There's always going to be somebody better. There's always going to be something to compare yourself to at any level, right? And you're always going to struggle if you can't find a way to separate that and not compare, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just a very unhappy place to be if
I
you're
think so.
comparing.
Yeah, and then another, like, I was chatting with my sons about this because we watch football, and they were like, "Oh, this quarterback, like, he sucks," and
Mm,
I'm like, "Wait, timeout. He plays in the NFL."
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, but he's not as good as so and so, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, okay. Number one, like, there's team, there's scheme, there's
Yeah.
coaching staff. These are just games won by inches. Like,
Mhm.
all of these quarterbacks that play in the NFL like are at the
Top.
most elite
Yeah.
level they can be,
Mhm.
and there's no quarterback that sucks. Like
Right.
that's crazy when you think about it. And I think similarly for career success, like you might already be playing in the NFL,
Yeah.
but you might not like you're not going to win like three freaking Super Bowls in a row. Like that's hard to do, and
Yeah.
it's
Not,
not all
you
about
don't have to be
you.
Tom Brady. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think if you try to like will yourself into changing those odds, like you can start to
Mhm.
get to a place where you're not acting naturally in the flow, and
Mhm.
you're kind of trying to force it.
Yeah.
And so I do think there is like, of course, you want to leave it all on the field, but
Yeah.
like if you get too tight and you're in a rush, then you're kind of probably going to make it worse for yourself too.
It's true. So poker. So do you actually like go play like poker tournaments? Like, is that your thing?
I have a monthly game with a few section mates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun.
And so we play, and I'm talking about comparison culture. Like I am the poor man in that group. Like
Oh, really?
hedge fund
Yeah.
managers and stuff like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So luckily we play just for very small stakes. But yeah, I think it teaches you. I try to teach the kids like life lessons because poker is all about making good choices, taking calculated risks, understanding the dynamics of like multiple signals, and
Yeah.
then being comfortable with variance, and
Mm.
life is freaking variance.
And I guess, yeah, that's so interesting because my younger son has been playing poker with his dad for
Uh-huh.
years, and they have this running tab. He's like in the whole like billions of dollars. Because he's so comfortable out on that debt limb, right? Like, I want to bet it all. And I'm like, okay, I
Yeah,
don't know if you're not learning the lesson that we want you to learn yet. Maybe there's like, yeah, what do you do with the kid who's just keeps betting it all? Like, I'm confident I can throw another. I
yeah.
don't know if he's getting the lesson.
I mean, that sounds like young male brain behavior.
Maybe.
Because I play with my kids, like my youngest, and he's like, I call him Captain Call because he's like, I don't know, I could win it all back this time. And but lately he's been, now he's 15, and I think he's starting to realize, because what I introduced was like, well, we're gonna, if we want to play, like, you're gonna make these decisions. It'll be just for like a couple bucks a hand or whatever, but it'll come out of your
Like,
account.
yeah.
And so, like, you
Real
won't be able to go buy yourself like a nice lunch
Yeah.
this weekend or something, or you will, based on these decisions. So it's not just like this funny money, like
Yeah.
pulling like a casino game kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is like, you're gonna make decisions. There's results.
Yeah.
There's impact, and think about it.
Yeah.
And if anything, the one thing that I thought was good judgment was, after a while, he's like, I don't want to play you anymore. And I was like, well, that might be a good lesson, which is like, you have to assess your opportunities.
Yeah. Totally.
So yeah, I can't wait to we got to have you back, Amanda. I feel like we just scratched the surface. I know I promised you it'd be 30 minutes, and we're over an hour. So I apologize for going so long, but it was so fun catching up.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me.
So it's Drum Chick Theory on Substack. And then if you randomly happen to be in a business that requires advanced seating technology, the company was it Callaghan?
Callaghan. Mm-hmm.
Callaghan.
Yeah.
And how does it actually help you? Like, what is the technology behind the seating?
Yeah, so it's a combination of foam and air bladders and sensors and software. So it adjusts the pressure. So for people that sit in wheelchairs, normally you have to be able to do offloads. So they're supposed to lift themselves up to get the blood flow back so they don't get pressure injuries. And sitting in this cushion, it does two things. It automatically moves the pressure by the air kind of coming and going, and there's an app. So if somebody has an active pressure injury, the part that I think is just amazing every time I hear a user story, if you have a pressure injury, you're often laying in bed for a long time because you can't sit up because it won't heal. And these can go on for years, and they can take lives. And with the app, they can actually remove all the pressure in that area, so they can actually still, while it's healing, get out of bed, get in their chair, and live their life and help heal ultimately the pressure injuries so that they don't have to deal with that anymore. And so, yeah, that's what it does.
That sounds amazing. I kind of feel like I want to add one to my Aeron chair because I sit at the desk so long.
Yeah, we always hear this going all the way back to the beginning. Everyone's like, got to put in desk chairs. And it's like, we will at some point. That is, the idea is it's technology can go into lots of different applications. But if you really look at the use case, when you're sitting still and you have to move for them, is really different than when you're moving around. And I tried sitting in one of our cushions at my desk. And if you're being really honest, it's like, it's not super comfortable in the way it's designed right now for that use case. But all the underlying like understandings of ergonomics and how people sit and how to design, we do all the in-house like bladder designing. We've got, if anyone who loves like machines, we just moved from a small little production area to like a 3 times larger space. And so our CEO is incredible at finding like used manufacturing equipment. And then we get like people, like newer people in and train them up. It's really cool when people talk about US based manufacturing. We're actually doing that. So at some point there will be office chairs. My role is also helping, like, let's stay focused.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And then aftermarket, like if I have a long road trip, I wouldn't mind adding it. Like maybe it doesn't come with my car, but I can pay a little, afterwards and add it on.
And that's one much more than an office chair because you are kind of stuck in a position. It really, like, we have to be in that market. Like, we are by far, I think, the best option. It's why Hyundai, I think, was excited about us.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's also the struggle too. Do you pour a ton of cash on and really hire up and grow out. But this is where I might come back and pick your brain. We don't have a really deep product management team. And if we're going to go in all these different verticals, we really need to start having more methodical, like, product
Yeah.
teams building roadmaps and like getting costs down. And it becomes a real business that needs to scale. And if you try
Yeah.
to do it before you're ready, this isn't one that we want to have be the 1 in 10 is huge. Like we have enough established that it should be successful, that we want to grow intelligently.
I hear you. Yeah, I think you guys are doing it the right way, to be honest. I mean, even though I love like new ideas and adjacent markets,
Hmm.
I think the risk is you build out a product team focused on like aftermarket automotive or something.
Hmm.
And then you will want to hire a PM that's going to be thinking all day long about it.
So
And
if
then
you
you,
have a good, actually, with all the people you talk to, if you find opportunistically, we don't have the bandwidth to go on a search, but if you find an automotive PM, aviation, like tier 1 seating PM for commercial aviation, like we are totally open to hire. So if there's someone who wants to get into a growing company with deep, now I'm like the person who wants the functional PM expertise, but I do see the value in that, because we're past having the generalist, like, to really grow. If you find somebody awesome, send them our way.
okay, so you're looking for like the person that worked on like seating for Tesla or Rivian or something like that?
Totally.
Well, you never know. I mean, I think there's like I'll put this on LinkedIn. There's like 10,000 followers, so maybe one of
Cool.
them.
Awesome. Yeah.
How and they can reach you on LinkedIn, I'm guessing, Matt.
Yeah. Hmm.
Awesome. Well, have a great new year and rest of your weekend.
Thanks. You too, Tom. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.